like Becky said, it's Tom, Lori. I said, I know.
Lori Palmer, I'm seriously delighted to actually get to sit and talk to you today. It's really good to have you here.
Tom, thank you. I feel like I'm with my brother.
Yeah.
It's been so many years.
Yeah, we've been through many years together in, let's not say this industry, let's say the lineage of this industry, right? Because
Yes.
iSigma is a relatively new organization that happened, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, but you came out of the PRISM lineage. Let's call it the PRISM lineage. And, you know, you got honored today, and I want to recognize this first. You got honored today with a Lifetime Achievement Award, the Robert Johnson Lifetime Achievement Award. And the Lifetime Achievement Award, for people who don't know, you might go, how did you get the Lifetime Achievement Award? We don't know who you are. For a lot of shredders, don't know who you are necessarily. So let's go back and tell your story, because I think your story is really cool. So take me as far back as you can remember when you first connected to the records management side of this industry. Tell me what caused you to show up one day into this industry.
Okay, so I was going on 18 years old, and I was going to school at night, and I wanted to be an interior designer, and I needed a part-time job. So I ended up getting a full-time job as a receptionist for Reb. And
Reb, just for everybody's awareness, Reb is?
REB, Storage Systems International, and they sell racking.
Racking. Okay,
Racking.
So you show up as a part-time for a part-time job at Reb. How many years ago? You were 18 at the time.
I was 18.
Yeah, so let's not worry about how many years ago. At 18,
That's okay. Anybody can do the math. I don't care anymore, Tom.
So you show up at 18, and you get hired as the receptionist.
Yes.
The receptionist. Okay.
Yes.
So you walk in, and was Tom Lesko running the company at that point?
He was, and we were in a little warehouse in the stockyards on the south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
And I got interviewed by what was then Tom's partner. His name was Don Hammondtree. And he met me at a bar to interview me. I was 18. I wasn't even of drinking age. Okay. So he meets me at a bar,
beautiful.
and I'm thinking, my father's having a fit, that I'm going to meet this man at a bar for a job interview. And we talked for hours. And he said, you're hired. So literally the next day, I showed up in a not-so-great neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. And I worked as the receptionist/secretary back when you typed on a typewriter, before it had whiteout tape. So we had those little bottles of liquid whiteout.
Yeah.
And I became known as the whiteout queen at Reb because I was a horrible typist. It definitely was not my thing.
Okay, so you start at Reb as a receptionist, but what was the next steps along the way? What happened?
So I worked with another woman in the office, and then we had a small sales team. And Tom had been taking over the company, and the E and Reb was Tom's dad. And Tom's dad was doing some work trying to, find leads for the company and so forth. And I always used to say, I want to do sales. And he's like, you're a young lady. It's nowhere for a young lady to be walking around these warehouses. Okay. So the phone rang one day, and it was the University of Chicago. And somebody stepped on the bottom shelf of a file unit, and it basically collapsed, and it caused several others to collapse. And they called because they needed somebody to come right out. And we had no salesman. They were all out. So I said to Rose at the time, I said, I've got a tape measure. It's not far from here. I'll go do it. And she's like, but I said, no, I'll go do it. I'll just get the measurements, bring them back. So I went and did it, brought it back, and Tom's dad was there, and he showed me how to do the layout. So I manually took a scale, I laid it out, and I did it, and I got the order. And Tom's dad then became my friend, right? So he started to give me leads. My father was like, Lori, you need to continue on your career path of becoming an admin. Why would you want to be walking around these warehouses? And you know what? I loved it. I loved going in different places. The thought of going in all these different types of companies excited me.
Yeah.
So at that time, like I said, the University of Chicago was file storage. So at that time, we used to belong and we were very active in the ARMA chapter.
Right.
So Tom started to bring me to ARMA meetings with him. So I actually started going to a lot of the ARMA meetings, and I got to understand the industry. And I did that for many, many years. And during that time, we obviously became active in ACRC at the time, which was the Association of Commercial Record Centers, which was founded in 1981.
Right, and that came before PRISM. That's
Correct.
That's previous to PRISM in the
Yes.
lineage.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were the first supplier invited to show our goods. And they brought me, the little girl got to go with to the trade show. And honestly, that's where I found what I love to do.
Yeah.
I love people, and I loved understanding what they did, and I loved this industry. It clicked way back then.
Yeah. Well, because that the ACRC group that you went into in that original meeting was people like Steve Richards. Who else was in that?
Eric Tannery.
Right, and he was from which company? What was the name of that company?
Tom.
Oh no, don't worry
yeah.
about it. But there was a group of others in that original ACRC that were really, the grandfathers of this industry.
There were, and oh boy, I should have
I know.
thought.
No, it's fine.
But it was that founding group. It
Yeah.
was that founding group, and it was a small group. It wasn't a huge group.
Right.
But then it got big. It got bigger, and you realized how many people from the moving and storage industry
Right.
were actually in the archives business. And then
Right. So that was
Yes.
really how the industry really blossomed.
Yes.
Which was there was this original group, and then once people started knowing, you could put boxes on shelves.
Yes.
And you were the only vendor in the ACRC community that put boxes on or knew how to build shelves. Then stuff started happening. But
Yes.
what I've always thought was so cool, because I came in just after ACRC went away.
Okay.
And what was so cool to me was you already had these profound connections with this whole group of people. Like you were already the bomb at that point.
We were, you know what? This whole industry is just based on relationships.
Yeah.
And from day one, that was the best part about it, because it wasn't like working.
Yeah.
It was just like making friends and spending time together. And this morning when I mentioned knowing people's parents and knowing now grown adults as children back then, and now I know their children, that's what it was about.
Yeah.
You knew when somebody was getting married. My husband and my first date was Mike Jerzakowski from Chicago Records' wedding. That was our first date.
Right.
So, I mean, we were all connected.
Yes,
we all were deeply, deeply connected. And I think that's honestly what built the association, because people saw that. And not only were they coming in to get business advice, but they knew there were people they could talk to.
Yeah.
They were competitors of each other, but they were willing to share information
Yeah.
with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And that sort of snowballed, because the other part of that, which is why you got invited to people's weddings, is because you went out and looked at their facilities, and you went out and helped, and so you became part of not just this salesperson from afar who worked at Reb. You were a salesperson who showed up and looked at their building and then tried to give drawings to them. And in the early stages, before we had
Yes.
really good CAD drawings and all that kind of stuff, you were doing like
Oh, yeah, with regular tape measures, going out, being able to scale a wall with a 30-foot tape. Absolutely. And then you'd go back and you'd take a scale and scale it out on a piece of paper and tell them how many boxes they could fit into their facility. And then back then, we had one draftsman, and he worked on a drafting table, and he did everything by hand. And now, you think about it, we've got almost 10 people in that department that
Right.
drew electronic drawings. But it was just amazing, because it basically took over our business. We had started as a material handling company, so we sold racking, we sold small conveyor systems, we sold hoists, we sold totes, bins, regular shelving. And then this industry was a niche for us,
Yeah.
but it took us over. And it was a great thing because this is all we did, honestly, for over 20 years.
Right.
This was our business. And the friendships and the relationships, not only was it a U.S. business, it began to take us international.
Right.
Because we had customers that brought us international, plus PRISM, then PRISM after ACRC,
Yep.
they became international.
Right.
So we used to do trade shows not only in the U.S., but in Europe and in Asia.
We have been
Everywhere.
literally been everywhere, right?
We have.
All over the place. Yeah.
And remember, like, people would say, wow, the Europeans would say, wow, you're pretty well traveled for an American. Say, but I never would have been if it
Right.
wasn't for this
Correct.
group.
Yeah.
It never would have been.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like getting on a plane and going into a tour group, right? You knew somebody who lived there. You knew somebody who knew the restaurants. You knew somebody around there all the time. And it just made it so much easier to be able to travel
Yeah.
and go to these places. And the next thing I knew, I'd say, okay, I'm getting on a plane. I have to go to Malaysia. And my husband would look at me like I have 3 heads. But that's how comfortable
Right.
it became for me.
Right. But going to Malaysia didn't mean you were being plopped down in the middle of nowhere where you were just trying to find your way. When you
Right.
dropped down, somebody was meeting you at the airport and you were going to their facility and you were going to their house and you're meeting their kids and
Right.
so many good things were happening at that point in time. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we'd
Yeah.
go to people's houses for cocktail parties.
Yeah.
They would take us to restaurants. We'd go on these really cool boat cruises.
Yeah.
We'd meet their children because, like you said, their
Right.
children would be local, so they'd bring them to the meetings. Actually, some of my very best friends, there's a group of international ladies, and they were either business owners in the association or they were spouses of business
Yep.
owners. And we've actually had their children come live with my husband and
Yeah.
myself. And that's how close we were.
Right. Right.
That's how close we
It
were.
really is, deep connections that went beyond business connections, although that still remains, but it's friendships, it's deep friendships. We've been at, together at weddings in London of all places, right? With
Right.
people who are part
Yes.
of this world that we were both serving, but at the same time they were deep friends, like
Yeah.
deep friendships that we got to show up and be part of it. But so let's fast forward a bit, because you went from sort of being a salesperson, and little by little you went from being the receptionist to a salesperson to like the sales manager to the sales leader to the CEO of the company.
CEO. I was an executive vice. I went from sales manager to executive vice president.
Yep.
And it was always, Tom was the sole owner of the
Yeah.
company. And everybody always used to think, oh, you're the owner. I'm like, no, I'm not the owner. I'm not the owner. And I was very fortunate because Tom gave me the ability to basically treat it like it was my own company for so many years.
Yeah.
And he'd say, give me a plan. Okay, I'm good with it. Go for it. And if sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And he was always good with it. And then he made me the executive vice president. And then one day he said, it's time.
It's time.
It's time.
Yeah.
So I become the president. And then I became a part owner.
Yeah.
And we have a plan for the future and for the succession of the company, in which I'm sure people see there's a completely different team that is now involved with Reb, but it's our next generation.
Yeah. It's delightful.
Next group.
Delightful.
Yes.
So this industry has evolved and changed. Reb was really, a founding part of the massive growth of the record storage industry.
Yes.
I mean, I remember talking to Richard Reese a number of years ago on my first podcast, where he said he jumped in the river at the right time. That was his line. And you were in the river at the exact same time he was. And this massive growth of, Iron Mountain, and then there was Pierce, and there was all these different companies, and they it grew and it grew and it grew and then consolidated and grew again. And then we had the access and then we had the VRC and all of these you've been a part of. But now the industry is really consolidated dramatically, the records
Right.
industry. And that's undoubtedly changed you. So there's been service changes for you. You're not just a racking provider anymore. Give us a sense of all of the iterations that Reb has gone through recently before we jump outside of the industry.
So basically, we still provide a lot to this industry. We do a lot of new systems, new racking
Yep.
systems still, because there's always additional growth, there's replacement, but we do remediation.
Yeah.
So obviously, if somebody hits something with a forklift, we'll go in and we repair it. And with box storage, it's not an easy process, but we have it down pat. And then ladders, carts, ancillary items that make it easier for people to utilize their racking system within their facility.
Yeah, and it many of the large companies now in the space, and it's predominantly managed by them now. It's not
Yes.
that there's not smaller providers, but many of them have been acquired. But a lot of those are still growing. They're repositioning. I remember being at one time in a recall building with you. Remember the new recall
Yes.
building that we
Oh,
went
you're right,
into?
in
That
Cranberry.
was
Yes.
like it was monstrous. And going through that, and you go, well, this is just them growing, right, or consolidating, and so that's perpetually happening. But one of the cool things that I've observed you guys doing is the evolution of much more sophisticated systems, right? It's not just box on a shelf. It's how do you get that box to how do you get that box to when it's picked to when it's on the floor, and elevators and like all kinds of. Tell me a little bit about the evolution of more not just racking but moving those things.
Moving. So obviously, as they say, as the world changes, you have to change with it or
Yeah.
you don't move, right? So the past 10 years, we really marketed heavily as the industry started to change within records management. And we have found some niche markets outside of records management that cause you to be very creative, right? Because there's so many different products. If you just think of all the products in the world that are either manufactured or distributed by companies, you think all the different sizes, weights, how they're packaged, how they're picked, who they're going to. So you think, okay, everything isn't going on a box on a shelf anymore.
Right.
Right? It can either be poly-packed and stacked in a cart on a shelf. It can be on a pallet. It can be on rivet, hand-picked. There's so many options. Conveyors.
Yeah.
Conveyor systems are utilized. So there's so many different types. And now as the world changes, what do you have? You have robots.
Right.
Who would have ever thought we were going to see this world of robots? Our big industry show was just in Chicago last month called ProMat. And to walk through there, it was like being in a Jetsons episode. You used to watch that as a kid and go, yeah, ha, ha, ha. Well, let me tell you.
It's real.
It's real.
Yeah.
There were robots actually serving us like beverages on
Yep.
the floor. It's amazing what's going to happen. And it's just as the world evolves, as we have manpower issues, efficiency issues, it has to. It has to.
But what's really interesting about it to me is all those robots and that they still have to work within a system whereby they pull a box or a thing off a shelf a lot
Yes.
of times, right? Because
Right.
they build big, tall buildings and they put a way to house stuff. And then, so even with all the automation and all that cool stuff that's happening, the backbone of that is still a really efficient storage racking system.
Yes.
And that foundation
Yes.
is really important.
Yes, you are correct. I mean, the storage of it is important because obviously you pay a lot of money to have a building built or you lease a building. There's a lot of things that come into play. There's the floor slab. What are the codes?
Right.
Are there seismic conditions? What are the fire code issues? Because that's going to depend on how high the building is, what you're storing on the shelving, what type of shelving you're going to use to store the product. So it all works together.
Yeah.
It's not, you can't just say, okay, I have a building and I'm just going to put a bunch of rack on it and put decking on it
Yeah.
for this product, because it doesn't work that way anymore. So it was a change for us. But I always say it gave us the ability to become extremely creative again, right?
Yeah.
Because I used to honestly be able to sell rim shelving in my sleep. My husband would say I was talking about 3 high, 3 deep, 2 high, 3 deep in my
Right.
sleep at night.
Yeah.
And this gives you that creativity where you
Yeah.
can go in and actually think through projects and create solutions for people.
But I think what's really cool too is what you've had to adapt to and grow these other markets that you go into also brings really interesting stuff back to this original market, right? Is the ability
Correct.
to say, well, we've done this and you have this particular situation. We got this really cool thing we've done somewhere else.
Right.
That becomes really kind of interesting.
It is. It becomes very interesting. And, being able, like the rim people and people who have warehouses all seem to do other things, right?
Yep.
They started putting their hands into other things. So we obviously helped them. So that helped us
Yeah.
as we transitioned into this new part of our business,
Right.
because it wasn't like we were just doing box storage for the last 20 years. We were helping them do
Right.
other types of storage also.
Yeah.
Yes.
So somebody who had in our world, somebody had a moving company who started in records, but then they went, oh, that's interesting. Let's do this other thing, and they had warehouses.
Let's
many
do
times.
wine storage.
Let's do wine
Let's
storage.
do wine storage.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And I mean, even things like, it's so because when I walked through, I've been to your plant, and then you had all these like cages and stuff, and the industry went through this whole phase of vaults, and you did really interesting thing in vaults
Right.
over the years. I mean, you've
Yes.
done so many interesting things that pretty much any situation you see now
Yes.
is something that you can do something with. So,
Well, you know what's funny? We used to do vaults, right? So they were climate controlled.
yep.
But you know what we do a lot of now? A lot of freezers.
Right.
They're climate controlled, right? So there's a lot of transition that becomes familiar from past things that you've done. You're
Yep.
just storing different types of things.
Right. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So, the future is continuing to emerge, and I think it was really cool to see today both the recognition of all of the stuff. So, what is hard to say sometimes, but it's easy for me to say about you is it's not just the fact that you showed up and sold and came from the receptionist to be the sales rep, to be the sales manager, to be the EVP, to be the president, and then take an ownership position. But along the way in the PRISM era,
Yes.
you did this massive amount of investment in the organization. Like, you were generally considered the largest vendor. You were generally, for many years, you sat on the board of directors as like the board requested you to be on there. Even though there was a vendor partner, you were the extra because you were
Yes.
so deeply connected to the industry. And for that, I go back and say, my gosh, Lori, you just contributed so freaking much. Not just the cool parties and all the stuff that you did over the years, but to the association to get it where it went to. So I want to say thank you for that, because that was a really cool
Thank you,
extra
Tom.
as well. So
Thank you. You know what? It was so much fun. I have to tell you,
Yeah.
so much fun. And my heart is still in this organization.
yeah,
And being here this week just brought everything back.
yeah,
And as I work with my new team, they're not really new anymore, right? So they've been around, some of them for 10 years.
yeah,
And they could never get it, right? They're always like, okay, Lori, yes, we know record storage, but it's changing. And I'm saying, but you guys don't understand. You don't understand what it did for our business, but not only what it did for our business, it did it for me.
Right.
And the growth it gave me.
yeah, yeah.
And they're a group of people that you will never find another group like this.
No.
Never.
No.
Never.
Yeah, it's an incredibly amazing connection of people and history and experiences and everything. So,
Right.
so to end this, I want to say on behalf of this entire industry, you rock. You are the queen. You deserve more than the Lifetime Achievement Award. You probably deserve 7 Lifetime Achievement Awards. So thank you for everything you've done, how much you've contributed, and how much you've given me. I mean, personally, I stand on your back many times and go, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So I'm so grateful for you and what you've given. So thank you.
Ditto, Tom, because you have helped me in more ways than you'll ever know. And the best part about it is the friendship.
Yes.
The friendships that will never go away.
Yeah.
Industries will change,
Yeah.
but the friendships will always be here.
Yeah. Thank you. I've been delighted to talk to you about this all today, and thank you for sharing your story and your journey, and love you dearly.
Love you dearly. Thank you.